So welcome everybody to the fourth Herp Panel Forum discussion. My name is Steven. Glad to have you guys all here. Today we're going to be talking all about enclosures, and that means just the business, the folks who make them. Unfortunately, we had, due to weather, the Outlaw Exotics team is currently in Alabama, so they're dealing with some pretty severe storms, and their Wi-Fi isn't happening. So we've got Scalebox and we've got Herptastic Reptiles here with us. We're happy to have them. As you guys can see by the setups I've got back here, I am an unbiased panelist here. I'm not a customer. I'm using plastic for everything still, but we talk and we get other stuff. So without further ado, let's introduce ourselves. I'll start with, we've got Dustin and Jerry with Scalebox, and we have Chris with Herptastic Reptiles. But let's start with, get right into it and dive right in. We'll start with Chris. So introduce yourself, tell me about you, how you got into reptiles, how you got into the enclosure business, and now is the time to plug your business.
Well, I got back into the reptile business, just into the reptile hobby after being out for a while, sometime around 2010. And then around 2012, I decided I was going to be a breeder. So I ended up building a few things for myself, and everybody was like, well, you should build something for me. Mm-hmm. And then that snowballed into me having a CNC machine in my garage, and then it snowballed into me having commercial space, and now it snowballed into me having 2 CNC machines and still being 8 weeks behind.
Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, what's a CNC machine?
A CNC machine is basically a machine that takes the sheet of plastic and cuts everything exactly how I tell the computer to cut it. It looks like they're showing theirs off.
Yeah, Dustin's in the warehouse now, so there it is back there. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So, yep, the machine does all the work, but the designs are the important part.
Right on. And so how long have you been building custom cages with Herptastic Reptiles?
I've been doing this for about 7 or 8 years. It's almost 8. And, yeah, it's been a little time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, welcome. Dustin and Jerry, same thing. Introduce yourselves. How'd you guys get into reptiles and the enclosure business?
Well, we just met, a couple years ago. I've been a woodworker my whole life by trade mostly, and it's hard to do anything in wood these days, with big lots, Walmart and everything. And so when I got into reptiles, you start looking around, and then you find people like Chris. You say, hey, there's enclosures in this. And being a woodworker, I was like, well, I think we can have a go at it. Mm-hmm. And me and Jerry, it was rough. We was doing everything old school, hand saws, routers. I don't know how long, 6, 8, 9 months we done that. It was tough. We finally saved up. We got the first CNC finally, and things have gotten much better since then.
So tell me two things. One, so people kind of know where your prices are coming from and that sort of thing. How much does a CNC cost? And what's the difference between, ballpark, you don't have to tell me what you paid, but if you're sensitive to that, what's the time difference? So what's the difference between cutting it by hand and how much will using the computer save you?
Oh, well, there's a lot to that. In my CNC, I got about 20 grand in that one.
Yeah,
and that's the low end. Yeah, that's not. You can get a lot better, I promise. Mm-hmm. But there's really no need, for what we do with just working 1/2-inch sheets all day every day. It's about a median. You make a decision.
And, yeah, right. For me, they're showing me machines that can cut granite, and I'm like, I'm not cutting countertops. Just literally to cut this really thin, really soft material the biggest difference in the long run with running a machine is the accuracy and repeatability. You can you can make jigs and you can do a whole bunch of work. I mean, I did it for 2 or 3 years in my garage before I got the CNC. So you can do a lot with jigs. You can do a lot with, having everything the way you want it to be. But it takes hours upon hours. You're doing 1 or 2 racks a day rather than doing 5 or 6 racks a day, 10 racks a day that are all exactly the same and perfect.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks for breaking it down. And Chris, you said you bred reptiles before. What were you breeding?
I've bred bearded dragons, bulk pythons, and corn snakes.
Nice. Dustin, what about you? What got you into reptiles?
My son. I honestly, up until the point, I never really thought about reptiles or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
My son one day, he said, Daddy, he said, I don't know where he got it from. He said, Daddy, I want a white snake. And I was like, all right, well, I talked to Kayla. I said, let's see, let's see what we can do. So I bought him it wasn't a white snake. I went out, my first one, it was a little, a buff gene corn snake. I fell in love with him. I ended up with very quickly, around 50 corn snakes.
Oh my gosh.
And, but that was short-lived. I found the Pituophis gene. I found the bulls.
Yeah.
Fell in love, and it's been that way ever since. I had to, because of space issues. I offloaded the corns. I'm at about 60 bulls right now, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, and I think, and we won't get too much into it right now because it's a little off topic, but I think we've seen on your, if people are friends with you on Facebook or on your Scalebox site, building up the new sort of mobile.
Oh yeah, my
room.
mobile snake room.
Yeah, it's looking good. But that's cool that you can kind of incorporate your own technique with your own room there. That brings me to a next point when you bring up the Pituophis, because you and I had a conversation before, and this is a little bit of a tangent, so it's not specifically on the topic, but I thought it was really important that we wanted to discuss, and you thought it was really in class too. So based on this private conversation, we've all seen gorgeous reptile rooms and stacks of PVC enclosures all along people's walls. Is that the best place to bring a new pet reptile? Basically, what I want to ask is, what's the importance of quarantining reptiles? So we can get all these beautiful cages and set up a reptile room. Just because your room is beautiful doesn't mean you're avoiding very real issues. And I wanted you to talk about that because you said you had some personal experience with that.
Yeah, that's correct. And that was a very hard issue and very costly mistake for me, just in the last year. It basically boils down to human nature. So let's say, you go with stuff, everything goes good. You get a reptile, you get 2 or 3 reptiles, you get 5, everything goes fine. There's no issues. With humans, things wear down, things wear off. So that worry about something happening kind of dies off. You're like, well, hell, I got 10 of them now. Everything's fine. Nothing's really going to happen. So that's the place I put myself in. That's the mindset that I got. Mm-hmm. I had some good breeders. I was building my bull collection. I kind of done away with the quarantine phase, and it cost me a lot. And it was rare. It's very rare. I went to multiple vets. I spent thousands of dollars, and I babied this one snake for 3 months. Done everything I could do. Done multiple vets, multiple tests, antibiotics. Made it drink water every night, and nobody knew. And it came out. It was one of the toughest viruses you can get. It came out to be crypto, and it was right in the middle of my rack system. And if it was diagnosed earlier, it might not have been so bad. But nobody knew. The vets couldn't tell me. Nobody could tell me. So yeah, quarantining is very important. I didn't get the diagnosis until necropsy.
Right.
And I got the diagnosis, and then it was downhill from there. Throwing racks away, cleaning everything, and seeing how many I'm gonna lose.
How many? I know it's a tough question. How many did you end up losing as a result of that?
Well, luckily, since I am very clean in everything I do, I only lost the ones very adjacent, side to side,
Mm-hmm.
maybe one top or below in the rack systems. So I was very lucky there. It came out to be about five bulls in total, but that was
It's
five
terrible.
Yes, yeah, it was. Yeah, it was very bad. But very good learning experience. I mean, I still haven't recovered.
Right.
I still got bulls in tubs and quarantined and going through testing and acquiring new 2020 bulls for this year's season because it's a little community and you don't want to miss out on what you're looking for. So I got them here, I got them there, I got them in my son's bedroom above their bed. I got them everywhere trying to make things work right now. And but it was a very long, costly, painful process.
Yeah. And so how long after you got the snake did it start showing symptoms?
I would
Roughly,
say,
right?
well, no, not right away. I mean, it was, well, with everything I've learned lately, it can be there and not be active, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that can become active after time. So with this one, it was good for about 3 weeks, and then the food eating started going down and diminishing. It was not interested in eating. It was not interested in drinking water. So like I said, every single night I would go in there and put its head in the water, make it drink because it was dehydrating. The skin was shrinking. I was trying to hydrate it. Hell, I even tried some stuff that nobody probably ever thought of. Jerry here recommended it. We went to Tractor Supply and got electrolytes, like for goats.
Right.
I tried to do some electrolytes. We done all the antibiotics from the vets because, this don't show up in the regular fecal samples that a vet will test for.
Mm.
It's just not going to show up. They're not going to be able to tell you. And most of them, even though they're reptile vets, the experience is just not there yet with this particular virus. And I don't know. It was a very, like I said, nobody knew what it was until the necropsy done by Texas A&M. And by that time, like I said, that thing had been in my collection for 3-4 months. So, because it seemed with the vet's decisions, it was like, oh, it's nothing really. It might just be, really nothing. They'll get over it. A little virus, a little stomach bug or something, something simple.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out to be very bad.
Very bad. And you said it started around 3 weeks, and I've heard of cases where it starts much later than that, which I think a lot of us has always heard a varying level of things when it comes to quarantine. Some people say make sure it has, proper, make sure it's going to the bathroom, and after a shed, you can just put it in with your collection. Or some people say 30 days. And really, I think what that exemplifies is if you weren't paying attention, you might say, oh, I just missed a meal. If it's just starting to show at 3 weeks, because it's probably not starting to look much worse until after that. And it just really goes to show that even if it starts up after that, you really have to be careful. 30, 60, 90 days is probably a much safer quarantine time.
Yeah, the longer the safer. If you got the room, the longer the safer. It's a very hard decision because speaking with all these experts I've done with now, this thing can lay dormant for a while, a good while.
Like what? What sort of ballpark were they giving you?
I mean, it could be dormant for 6 months, and then become active. And even if you got it tested by the real scientists and all at the universities and all, it might not show up positive because it only sheds intermittently.
Mm-hmm.
The only real way to get a true test is to do a stomach tube lavage, which really stresses your snakes out, and
Sure.
you don't want to do that to them unless you have to. So it's better to send off multiple feces tests, just to clear them and make sure they're good. But it's something, when you learn about it, it's something that's actually very common, not as rare as people think it is. It mainly comes from water sources. People get it. Me and you get it. Me and you get cryptosporidium all the time. It just doesn't affect us in the same ways.
Oh, really?
Like Cryptosporidium serpentis, what they get, which is deadly. Now, they could get another strain of crypto, and it's not deadly to them as a snake, but it would kill a gecko.
Yeah, I think we've all in the past year become somewhat experts on zoonotic transmission and how some things affect some animals and mutate, right? With the way that COVID is alleged come in its developments and all the questions around it. Chris, it sounded like you were about to say something there.
Yeah, with the one thing that a lot of people miss on quarantine is, let's say I've got a quarantine rack in a separate room, which is the right thing to do. And I put one snake in it, let's say it's April, and I'm going to do a 90-day quarantine. But then May comes along and I go to another reptile show and I get another snake. You have to restart the entire quarantine process again. Everything in that rack needs to go through a full 90 days. In my opinion, 90 days is the right amount. It might be that, you said 60 or 30, some people do. Me personally, I ran a very tight ship on 90 days, and I ended up with 20 rack spaces in quarantine because I bought too much at once.
Because you just keep getting new. That's a good problem to have. And that's, hey, we could tell.
As a rack builder, that's not a big problem.
Right. Yeah, it's easy for you. And we should all take advantage of that and really, tell our significant others that, listen, we need 2 reptile rooms, one for quarantine, one for the main. So it's not me. I don't need 2 reptile rooms. The animals need it, right? It's only fair. I'm getting a no. So moving on, and then we'll ask you, Chris, you guys work with PVC, right? What advantages does that have over the wood?
The biggest advantage is the fact that PVC is completely and totally impervious to water. What that means is, over the course of time, your snake is going to use the bathroom. It's going to spill its water bowl. You might put a soda down on top of your stack of cages and spill it. Maybe it's a beer, whatever. Mm-hmm. Lots of things that could affect the wood and make wood either swell or warp, or if it's lower grade stuff, it might even just splinter out to nothing. Certain types of plywood, when they get wet, they literally turn to dust. So you have that big advantage of not having to worry about that for a very long time. And within the PVC spectrum, there's great grades of PVC and there's lower grades of PVC. So you have to know what product you're getting from which source. Some people do use a much higher grade than others. I actually don't know what you guys use, so I'm not saying anything about you guys. I just know that I know one particular manufacturer uses something, and I don't know. It's not up to spec, even though it's PVC.
Yeah, I've tested probably 6 or 7 brands and companies, and what we decided on was the actual, not the generic, because somebody tricked us with that, but we actually ended up with the actual 3M Centra, and it's not the cheapest route.
No, it's certainly not.
No, it's pretty pricey.
Yep.
Well, that's yeah. Go ahead.
It's got that skin on it, just that nice little skin.
Yep.
That's what makes the difference.
So that kind of brings me to the next question. That there's a lot of companies out there, some with really great, fantastic websites. Some folks are just working out of their garage with just like a Facebook page, not even a group, not even a business page. But it doesn't mean that they're not putting out good quality. So what should customers look for when they're looking to buy a PVC enclosure? And we'll start with you, Dustin and Jerry.
I do want to say just one thing real quick on the previous question.
Yeah, please.
Because it is a big thing, especially with me. With the wood, like I said, I'm a wood builder by trade my whole life. I love wood. You can do beautiful things with it. The one thing about wood that people don't think about, viruses and bacteria can soak into that wood and stay. Like a cutting board, like chicken on a cutting board. It can soak in that cutting board. PVC will not soak in these viruses and stuff. So when you do a clean, like a bleach clean or a in-between clean, it's actually just coming off the surface. You ain't got to worry about nothing being in the first, second, or third layer soaked into that material like the wood. So it's a lot, on the safety side, it's a lot safer when it comes to that kind of stuff.
That's a really great point. Yeah, absolutely. Safety as well. And so great. So what should customers look for? Someone who just found out they're going to get a snake and they want to get the best PVC enclosure they can find. What sort of things should they look for when they're shopping around?
There's a lot of things, you want to pick out, what you want for your reptile beforehand. Some people, like me, I got deal breakers for people. Some people want stuff done in the ceilings, like a big screen vent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that. I won't do anything in the ceilings for structural integrity reasons. Glass, we don't deal with glass. Many purposes, shipping, and also if there's people that's partial that want, a glass sliding door, that's something they need to look at with the companies they're looking at. Hey, I want glass and I want this and I want this right off the bat. Do you provide this stuff? So the best thing going in with looking for enclosures is basically what you're looking for ahead of time. So you can, browse a couple companies and go ahead and knock out the ones, that don't really offer what you want. So you don't end up settling. You end up finding the company that does what you want. Exactly.
Gotcha. Awesome. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. All of that. The one thing I tell people to look for is try to find somebody who's got that enclosure or something similar. It's not, obviously that is not as good for the small guy who's just starting, but you can also tell a lot by the integrity of the company. You could tell a lot by the customer service provided, at least beforehand. And if you know somebody who's dealt with the company, you can see their reviews. That's really important to make sure that you're getting a company that's not going to go out of business.
Right.
It's happened a couple times since I've been doing this, where a company will literally just vanish off the face of the earth, and everybody is left trying to get their money back from PayPal. And it's terrible to watch, and you just feel so horrible for these people that basically got scammed, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, that's good input, and that's part of the reason why I invited you folks on to this panel. Is we talked before. I'd asked you a bunch of questions. Can you do this? Can you do that? Are you what would be the cost difference if you change this up and that sort of thing? And it just kind of made me realize, because I've spoken to other companies and it's like, I didn't hear back from them, or they were just said, it is the way it is on the website is the way that we put them out, and they're pumped out, so we don't really make changes and that sort of thing. And I thought, there's so many people like Scalebox, like Herptastic, that are doing a little extra and making changes and doing that sort of thing, that I think it's so important for people to know that they have options, that there are companies that they can reach out to that will do custom things for them. But it's also important, like you said, Dustin, to communicate with them ahead of time, because there's some things that you won't do because you don't want to sacrifice the integrity of the structure. So it's a valuable note to reach out and see, and ask them questions. I think a lot of people are, I'm a little nervous to ask a question because I'm not buying, I don't have the money right now, but or I'm not sure if I'm going to scare them away. Like, ask them, feel free to ask them, right? Which PVC, you guys told me, would you tell a customer if they said, hey, what PVC do you use? I'm assuming you would tell them right away, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Nothing to hide.
Yeah. And so as a customer, people should make sure that they do that, that they're not afraid to ask you guys questions. And it's, sorry if I'm making people ask a lot more questions and not buy, but I think that's really great for a customer to be a
No,
smart consumer.
please ask. My mantra that I tell customers is I'd rather the customer know exactly what they're getting than get something that isn't what they want.
Absolutely. No,
so you have to ask questions to get there.
And if you could educate the customer and make them a smart customer and give them proper expectations, then by the time it gets there, one, they can spread that business themselves. They could tell you, I asked this and this and this, and I got what he said he was going to do. It showed up at the right time, and I'm super happy. As opposed to, wasn't what I was expecting. You get that 4-star review. It's good. It's not what I expected. It's like, oh, you could have talked about this.
Yep. Yeah.
Great. Which leads me a little bit, kind of when we talk about folks doing it on their own. And one of my favorite things to do with the hobby is DIY. One of the things I love the tubs for is just being able to screw things in and screw them out, just modify, add in hides, all kinds of things like that, and building and anyways, melting things with my heat gun to bend them around and things like that. I love to customize. I love to change my enclosures all the time. What do you think is the best option for a consumer to buy? What is essentially a shell of an enclosure and allow them to customize it themselves, or talk to you guys and build customizations right out the door to built into the enclosure, like if we're talking about shelving or anything like that? So how would you work with customers to do this? And let's start with you, Chris.
Well, so first off, I offer a 4x2 cage with a shelf and a 3x2 cage with a shelf. Simple shelf, it goes edge to edge. It's great for people with carpet pythons and whatnot. It's there. But otherwise, I really recommend people to get a bearing enclosure, then take the time to do it the way they want to do it exactly. The PVC can be worked with any woodworking tool. It's very easy to drill holes into. One of the things I love to tell people to try is to take a manzanita bird perch and drill a hole through the PVC and screw the bird perch into the cage. It makes for a really nice climbing feature in the cage, really inexpensive.
Right, and then it's got that cool branch look in it too.
Exactly.
Right on. Dustin, Jerry, what would you guys say about that?
On that thing, that's basically more towards our gear set. You got the companies, they got these sizes. That's what they pump out. It's a good profit margin, but luckily we're more on the customer base, small scale, low output every week, relaxing. So on that note, like I said, every single customer I deal with multiple emails, multiple back and forths, making recommendations to them. They tell me ideas they have, and every customer, they get their own file, they get their own CNC, they get their own whatever they want. We'll do exactly what they want. A shelf, if they want to, this size, this high up, and everything turns out exactly to what they want, and we kind of go together with what they're thinking. If I can make their idea maybe a little better, or if I have an idea and they want to add on top of it, and then we work on it. But everything it's fun. It's really fun. You get people that come up with some really off the wall stuff, and it makes for great photos and great ideas that you would never think of that a reptile would actually. And they turn out nice. When you see the photos in the aftermath in their homes and their reptiles utilizing these different little features and stuff that they came up with or you implemented inside, it's awesome. But in the long run, PVC is very easy to do anything with, to add. You can, like Chris said, you can just get the shell. Just get the shell and then sit back and take your time and plan and bring what you have to life inside of that cube.
Nice. And Chris, I saw you had an interesting post for a recent customer, something that was maybe not reptile related, right?
Yeah, we actually just made a dog incubator for a customer. Basically very similar to a large cage with a secondary large cage attached to it. But we're going to put a humidifier and a heat panel in the one side, and then it's going to actually have a fan to blow the humid, warm air over to where the dog is going to actually be. Hopefully, I'm thinking it may end up being for whole litters. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely the customer has an oxygen sensor, and he's got an oxygen generator to actually add more oxygen in.
Oh, wow.
So the dogs can get all sorts of treatments.
Yeah, and so that's pretty awesome. Like if you guys just, if it's an enclosure, you guys can build it. It doesn't have to be a snake rack or anything like that. And so we kind of touched on this, right? But speaking with each of you guys, I think you both have terrific customer service skills, and we all know what those kind of include, right? Good communication, among many other things, fair prices, matching customer needs, and a few others. But let's flip it a little bit. What about the customers, right? For the people viewing and for folks seeing this on YouTube, what makes a good customer? So what questions should they ask? And is there anything a good customer doesn't do? Dustin and Jerry.
The more questions, the better. Dig in, ask. You always get the standard right off the bat. What's your lead times? What's how does this work? Do their payment options, all that good stuff. And then, start collaborating with the builder. That's what we are. We're builders. We're working for you. So, spend the time, ask the questions. Don't just rush into it and say, I'm gonna get a box and there we go. Unfortunately, all your companies like us, Chris, and the lead times they're bad. The demand is so high, but the time going into these little custom enclosures with all the accessories and working with the customers, it takes time. It's not a pump out production thing. You spend the time with each customer, but you get that satisfaction rather than pumping out the generic. Now on the bad side with customers, it gets worse and worse.
More money, more problems.
Know what you're looking for ahead of time. I really don't understand why, but lately I'm gonna go redo it actually. But on top of my website, you enter the store and I got statements. This is this. The current lead time is this. I got everything marked out of stock because I had to stop the mass influx of orders, or else lead times would be a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
So I only accept orders through personal email and stuff like that now. But I get 20 messages a day. Hey, when will this be back in stock? Well, it was never in stock to begin with because everything's built to order. The thing is, at least try to, because if you're jumping on a website and you're like, oh, it's out of stock, let me message this guy. Why is this out of stock?
Mm-hmm.
That's telling us, people, the builders like us that spend all this time with their customers, that you jumped on a website and you haven't looked into nothing. You don't know what you're looking for. You don't know what you want. You need to know what you want and take a little time to, read that much at the top of a website, that way it's the you gotta know what you're looking for. So, and help us out.
Slow down and think about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Chris, what about you? What do you say?
For me, a good customer is one that understands that the wait time can't be changed. It would not be right for me to just jump you ahead or something like that. That's just, that said, I do have a couple of products that are next day, 2-day type setups because we keep those, all the parts are in stock and all we have to do is assemble it and ship it out. So I do have a couple of things that are fast, but, I get asked literally every other day, hey, if 100 extra, if I can get it in 2 weeks
Right.
instead. And it's just like, no, man, I can't do that. That ain't even right.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to hear is that someone is, maybe it's great because then everyone's going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to talk to Chris and I'll give him extra money and he'll get it faster. But then you're in the same problem because now you've taken $100 from everyone and they're all expecting it faster, but they're in the same line. So you've got to figure that one out. No, I agree. That's why you don't get down that track anyways. And
That was a good one.
and figure, let's stay with you, Chris. And business aside, because I know the answer for that is always why not buy both. But what do you think is the best solution for animals? And kind of what's the purpose of each? What do you prefer, an enclosure or a rack, and why?
Well, like you said, they both have a place in the hobby. Racks are certainly great for animals that prefer the smaller spaces. Ball pythons, most North American colubrids would much prefer to be under a log than to be out on big display. So it's all about knowing your animal. Bearded dragons never should be in a rack. It just doesn't work. So we have enclosures for them. We have enclosures for snakes that prefer an enclosure. Carpet pythons, green tree pythons, those really are snakes that want to be out on a branch, just relaxing in the sun, and we have to give that to them. It's our privilege to keep these animals. We have to give them what's going to make them happy. So you have to know what your animal needs, and it's our job as an enclosure builder to kind of help you get the right direction. So, that's the key of it all, is we have to, as the enclosure builder, help direct you the right way so that you get the right product for you and for your animal. In the end, it's got to be about the animals first.
Right, absolutely. Dustin, Jerry, what do you guys take on that?
That was pretty spot on, but some people's tendencies, will push them to that next step automatically. I would recommend, if you can provide an enclosure for all your reptiles, whether it be large or small, with the proper hides and everything and setups with the temperature gradients, by all means, that is recommended. But, once you start getting into it and you start collecting, and you get to that breeder status where you just got too many, there's just no possible way, unless you live in a warehouse, that you could have an enclosure for all of them. So,
right.
Then you get pushed into that rack situation. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I would also recommend that you the certain species and all that should never go into a rack. There's a lot that are great. They're ideal for racks versus enclosures. But there's some things I've seen people have in racks that should never be in a rack. And just because space is an issue, that little line shouldn't be crossed.
Right. And that's I'm glad both of you guys brought that up, because that seems to be a question that a lot of people, you could jump on any site and tell someone, I keep all my snakes in racks, come at me. And you will get torn apart on Facebook or Reddit, wherever you're on. And I tend to take both sides in the agreement. I feel like there's a lot of times when an animal does not by any means belong in a rack. And I think even for pets, even animals like a ball python, I'll disagree a little bit with you. I think they do great in enclosures as well. And I think there's a lot of new thinking that goes into that. But I don't want to discount the folks who have put in 50, 60, 70 years of learning about the species, keeping the species, breeding the species successfully in racks, and just immediately throw that out the window and say, well, they're completely wrong. They don't know what they were talking about, and they were hurting these snakes actually for generations. I tend to think that probably there's a little bit of truth to both sides of the argument, and I always kind of want to explore that. So like I've recently had this discussion with a few people, and it, like I said, it gets very heated. Some people, there's a lot of folks out there that say there's never, ever a good reason to use a rack. I disagree with that. I think especially if you're breeding, if you have an animal that's going to produce 20 offspring and you breed 4 of them, I don't know how you're going to get 80 enclosures, even if they're small. So I just kind of wanted to know, we need to recognize that perhaps the more we learn that these snakes have more needs than we typically recognize, and racks maybe aren't meeting all of those requirements for snakes. So I want to know if you guys have put any thought into that. Have you ever had a customer ask to do something unique with that? Would you be willing to do something new if it meant better care for the snake? Anything like adding more height to the enclosure, providing UVB or near infrared heating, allowing for bioactive, right, which is another popular thing that keepers are talking about these days. And I'll start with you, Chris, wondering if there's been any sort of change recently to kind of look at the racking system differently. Have you noticed anything like that?
Well, I mean, bioactive has certainly taken quite a good hold of the hobby at this point. I really wasn't expecting it to, but hey, it's certainly something we can work with. I build plenty of caging for bioactive. It's not ideal for a rack, so of course it's not something we do with the racks. You know, the bottom line is, rack is what it is. It is storage, and it's designed to be a fairly high-density snake storage system. You know, we give them the heat they need. I've tried to think of different ways to do things. I have actually gotten some people that are doing blue-tongue skinks in the Christmas tree tub rack and actually putting soil and everything in those. I've gotten some people that are doing blood pythons in the Freedom Breeder 90 tub, which is an enormous tub. You know, it all depends on, everybody's space is a little different. Some people have more snake than they have space, and they go with the rack system. But you know, if I could push everybody to an enclosure, believe me, I would. I mean, I'd much rather make enclosures than racks. So,
Right.
Yes.
What about you, Dustin? Did you want to add anything onto that, or?
Yeah, I'm agree with him. Racks suck on building.
yep.
How's that?
Oh man, that topic is too long to discuss when it comes to the building.
Monotony does not even make it doesn't even put a dent in it.
So,
Right.
so one of the problems is, you know, racks. What you don't think of, what people don't think of to be cost effective. You know, these things use as much, if not a lot more, PVC material than a large enclosure.
Oh yeah.
So people don't
All
understand.
of those shelves is so much material so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, a little 5 shelf rack, and it uses an entire sheet of PVC that could be a 4-foot cage.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
people don't want to pay for a rack the same as what they would want to pay for this, you know?
Right.
Yep.
Even though it's using more PVC, they're trying to get it at a discount.
Well, to stay with the market and the price range on racks and such, you know, your profit margins are this big for the amount of work and time in these racks. It's unbelievable. And yeah, they're not ideal. They're not. It ain't something any builder, trust me, I promise you, likes to build and do.
Gotcha. Hey, it's good to know. But you still gotta offer them because it's still a huge part of the business, right? That's not how frequent do you say? What are the order ratios between enclosures and racks? What's more popular?
50-50.
I'd
mean-
say about 50-50.
Chris, do you
See,
find
for
that
me,
the
it's
same,
about
or
70-30.
with enclosures or with racks being 70?
It's mostly enclosures.
Yeah.
My racks I run standard. I don't really go too far from what I show on my website is pretty much what I do. Whereas the cages, I can go more custom, so I get a lot more cage business. And then, you know, somebody who bought one single enclosure tells their friend and they buy 4 because they can have 4 bearded dragons.
Right.
And then it goes on and on.
Right. Awesome. And then, so kind of going back to that, to sort of innovation and changing things up, I'm going to share my screen and show you guys something. during one of these Facebook conversations with an individual named Chelsea Isdaner, and I hope I'm saying that right. She showed me something, and I kind of wanted to share it with you guys. And so it should pull up here, so I think everyone can see that. Just this image, and this is a setup that she did for baby snakes. So this is what she replaced a hatchling rack with, and I was really kind of fascinated with it. And it's, as you can see, it's just like Sterilite tubs with screen, a hole cut out with screen on top, and then lights sort of suspended from above, and it really sort of changes. And I forget what snake she said was in there, and you know, don't want to throw too much of her business out there anyways, because I'm really more impressed with the design. And I'll go back to our regular screen here. And I was really impressed with that. I thought, wow, she's on to something, you know, because she gave those babies arguably a better home than just a tub in a closet. But as you can see, it takes up a lot of space comparatively, but it was still pretty innovative in terms of sort of linking things together and how it was connected there. And so I wanted to ask you guys that. So we'll go with Dustin and Jerry. What's the most innovative thing you've seen in an enclosure or rack? So it could be one of your ideas, a customer suggestion, or even something you've always wanted to try, even if it's something you haven't done yet.
I mean, that's a hard one. You know, we are always racking our brains. I got stuff I just started implementing. I got stuff I'm designing right now that is sitting over there and we're working on. And it's a hard thing because you might think it's a great idea. Some of these things I think are freaking amazing. And then nobody looks at it. I'm like, well, I liked it. But, you know, but there's so much out there, you know, and innovation right now is coming on a more casual basis from the customers. Like this customer, me and her collaborated a little bit, you know. So like this is the most recent thing that just popped in my head, you know. So she's getting a standard shelf on her back wall, but in that, you know, she wanted like a hide integrated. So what we're going to do for her is a hide. The shelf's going to be all the way across. The hide's going to be about halfway mark, and it's going to have a hinged lid. That part of the head is going to be hinged, so you can still get in there and clean the hide. And it's a 2-in-1. She's getting everything she wants and saving some space in her enclosure. And, I mean, it just all depends on your imagination. There's so much you can do, and I've seen a lot of great things from some. The bad thing is there's not a lot of companies out there doing what we do with new things. Not many of us.
Right. What were some of the ideas that you thought were great that no one got interested in? You said you had some stuff that was like shelved or something like that.
Oh man, we should go grab that thing. It's been sitting over there. It's been sitting. All right, so I don't know a whole lot about. Yes, you want to grab that? It's becoming vintage. So I never took my research a whole lot into it. So I was like, you know what? You know, the main thing we've been trying to do is get rid of our scrap pile. So you got all this material left over. So you're like, okay, what can we do with this? You know, what's the small projects we can do to kind of make use of this scrap instead of throwing it in a dumpster out there, you know? So I was like, okay, this is one little thing. And by all means, I'm not trying to show this for any particular reason. So this little thing, it's like a little rack, right?
Right, little tiny rack.
It's like a little tiny rack with heat tape in the back. It was built out of scrap. I was like, okay, you know what? That'll be great. You know, I see these photos of, I went to some arachnid spider groups and people with, you know, the insects. I found out there's a lot of people that like to keep insects and stuff. I was like, okay, well, and I see them, they got little glass containers all over their room. I was like, well, you know, I could do this. and they got a little rack system for their spiders or for their insects, and there's some heat in there. I don't know.
They could hang on the wall and it would
Yeah, but it went nowhere. So
No, I tried something with arachnids as well at one point, and it went nowhere. It was just like, okay, then I'll just leave. Goodbye.
well, you really dig into it, and then you find out, these little plastic things that the spider people are getting, they're like $2. So
Yep. You can't even compete.
There's no competing there.
Chris, what about
you? It's a cool idea.
It is a cool idea. I think you're right, though, in terms of the competition, because it's the price point is dramatically different.
Price is always your biggest factor.
Yeah, I believe it. Chris, what about you? What sort of innovative things have you seen or wanted to try, or suggestions from customers or anything like that?
That's the problem is that it's really hard to innovate when you're busy. And, other than taking a custom order here or there, like I did with this dog incubator, it's just basically I have to keep going with the same, mainly because customers expect the same. If they order a second cage later, they expect it to be the same as the first one. So I can't really change the designs too much, even if there was something amazing. I would have to integrate that slowly into the program. If I just threw it in the program, it would end up being a problem for somebody. They'd be like, "Oh, this is different."
Mm-hmm.
So our biggest, when we went from doing only open racks to doing all enclosed racks, it kind of bit me. There was a couple people, well, I still want an open rack. I need this to match.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll do what you need.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And so this, let's stay with you. This is much broader. So it could be about enclosures, it could be about racks. But what sort of changes, if any, would you like to see, whether it's an advancement or anything in the reptile hobby in general, in the reptile industry?
Probably the biggest thing that I would love to see happen, and I tried to do something about it and failed miserably, is I would like to see some kind of actual safety net built right into the heat tape, where it powers down if it gets too hot.
Yeah, that's pretty innovative. So kind of have it on temperature control just by what it is.
Right.
Yeah, that would be super helpful, right? I mean, we've all heard horror stories of a thermostat failing and people's ball pythons getting up to 140 degrees, right? Absolutely, yeah, that's a good idea. Why did it, what sort of roadblocks did you run into?
The cost really became a factor without doing it on a massive scale, which unfortunately the reptile hobby, even if I sold every single rack in the entire hobby, I still wouldn't be able to bring the cost down to something that people would feel is reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly don't sell every single rack in the hobby.
Gotcha. Yeah. Dustin and Jerry, I'll go same question to you. What changes or advancements would you like to see in the reptile industry or hobby in general?
That's the thing that, customers, I fear that a lot of customers don't dig in and know a whole lot about heat tape, the benefits and the dangers, because the dangers are there. It's a learning experience that everybody, they need to dig in and learn for themselves. Like with the heat tape, a personal thing, I really don't want to go into, because I don't want to say something about other people. I will not incorporate heat tape. Heat tape goes in my racks. I will not incorporate heat tape in my enclosures.
Nope.
I've seen it done. Now, I do something that I think I'm the only one that does it. I'm not sure. But I do use the Ultratherm heat pads. They are UL listed and certified. And I put them on the interior of the enclosures. So they go on the interior in the floor, but they get a 1/2-inch PVC pad cover over them around the edges, and they can be silicone sealed by the customer if needed. And that is the safest way I have been able to feel good about providing belly heat in an enclosure for the customers that would like to have it.
Right, and I think that pad is the important thing too, because you don't want the snake directly exposed to the to the tape. Excuse me, yeah, to the heating element itself, right?
No, radiation.
Yeah. Now we'll move on to a little fun lightning round question, and we'll start with scale boxes. And the first question is Miller, Bud, or Coors?
Well, none. I mean,
No, okay. Tell me what you got.
Michelob.
Michelob.
Well, I think they're made by the same. I think they're made by Anheuser. So we'll
There you go. Chris, are you afraid of spiders?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Terrific. So Dustin and Jerry, hotel or Airbnb?
I don't know what the second one is.
B&B, bed and breakfast.
Oh, all right then.
All right. And Chris, what's your favorite plant?
My favorite plant is probably African violet.
Well, that's a good one. A lot of flowers on that one. Dustin and Jerry, dogs or cats? Dogs. Chris, who's scarier, vampires or zombies?
Vampires.
All right, I agree. Scale boxes. You have to lose one forever. Sports or action movies?
Oh, sports.
All right. It's a bummer. I love sports. All right, Chris, which season of the year is your favorite?
Fall.
It's beautiful. Dustin and Jerry, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, or Mad Men?
Game of Thrones.
You guys both saying? All right. Can't fault you on that one. That's it, guys, for the lightning round. Thank you for sticking around for those stupid questions. We'll say goodnight. Check us out on YouTube, like and subscribe, all that business, and we'll call it an evening. Any questions or thoughts from any extra thoughts from you guys? Thank you so much for coming on. It was a blast. Thanks, guys, for attending. Those of you who stuck with us the whole evening, it was absolutely my pleasure to host you guys. So I look forward to, I'm sure we'll be discussing many more things in the future. So until then, have a great night, guys. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. Take care.
Bye.